on Twitter, you said 11 Serie A games for Pirlo on the Juventus bench, 6 draws and 6 wins, 5 of which they played for, I will put out. But then you went on to say that you can frame it another way and say that they are still unbeaten. So how should we frame it?
Yeah, I think overall, and I'm generally quite a glass half full person, but I tend to see this as disappointing for Juventus. I think that the minimum bar for this team is to win the league. It just is, whether you agree with it or not. That is what they expect. And this is not league winning form at the moment. Having said that, I did feel maybe like this was a mean time to bring it up, because I actually thought they played in the last week not so badly. The Atalanta are a team you can drop points against. This is not some of the points they've dropped already this season against Crotone. This is playing a team who have already taken points off you the last 2 seasons in Turin, who played really well, despite Gomez only coming in the second half. It was a competitive game of football. Juventus got the win at the weekend. And even in this game, where I thought the draw was the fair result, if Cristiano Ronaldo scores a penalty, you probably win. If Alvaro Morata, everyone's going to talk about his ridiculous backheel attempt, and rightly, because it looked ridiculous, but he was offside by that point. What perplexed me more was almost the level of desperation to give the ball to Ronaldo before that, when he could have just scored himself. He could have just scored. So there were definitely moments in this game that could have gone better for Juventus. I think they played well, and perhaps coming off that win over Barcelona, they are playing better. If you want things that actually bother me a little bit, I thought Ronaldo was bad in this game against Atalanta, not just the missed penalty. It's the most anonymous game we've seen from him in a while. And I still don't feel totally convinced by the fluidity of this team overall. I mean, Federico Chiesa's goal was magnificent, but it was the 3rd time he touched the ball all game, which is not enough for someone who's supposed to be playing quite an important role in your attack, I think. So there's still things that don't work. Weston McKennie was good, but yeah, it's not where it needs to be yet. I don't necessarily know that means that they're far behind the other teams in Serie A, though, because who really is consistently setting the world alight right now?
Nicky, it felt like when I saw the lineup that came out an hour before the game, I was wondering, is this close to being the best that Juventus can put out right now without Dybala in the lineup? Just Alexandro missing at left back. But other than that, I said, right, 3-man midfield. So we're actually seeing the evolution of Andrea Pirlo as a manager, where he's realizing what works. He needed time to figure this out. To figure this out is the first job that he's ever had as a manager in his life, to figure it out with new players who have come in for big money. And we've seen crazy video game formations with like 4 attackers. That didn't work. The teams were imbalanced. And now we're seeing a team that actually looks like a real team that makes sense. You're seeing the 3 midfielders that in theory should work better to give the team a bit more solidity, a bit more equilibrium. I thought Weston McKennie's inclusion, it's almost like he's become one of the first names on the team sheet, especially one of the first names in the midfield, right? Because Bentancur, although he was better, he's been poor throughout the season. Arthur, we're still not seeing the player that Juventus thought that they were getting. I feel like he isn't incisive nearly enough, especially in this game. But other than that, 2 center backs, 3 central midfielders, and a lot of good players are going to have to be on the bench, whether it's Kulusevski or Dybala. There just isn't room for everyone. So Pirlo's already tried this, just throw them all in there, throw in Kulusevski, Morata, Chiesa, Dybala, Ronaldo, put them all together, and then suddenly you can't hold possession in the midfield. So that was unrealistic, but the glass half full is this seems more like an actual real life team than what we've seen in the past.
Mina, is your glass half full or half empty?
Oh, very half full. I'm very happy, to be honest. I don't feel like any criticism is necessary. I think it's very normal to draw against Atalanta. I was very happy that they had previously to that managed to collect 2 Serie A victories in a row. This is a team, again, that's played 12 games in Serie A, and it's done splendidly in the Champions League group stage and actually won their group, including one that featured Barcelona, since we like brand names over here, even though this is the worst Barcelona I've ever seen. But having said all of these things, you look at the team and you notice that there have been several absences, and we make excuses for other coaches. And I think Pirlo deserves that. I know that they are supposed to win this league, and they should. They, alongside Inter, should be aiming to win this league. That's the very minimum that I expect from them. They have won it 9 years in a row, but I also think that their ceiling is much higher. This is just the beginning, and you're already seeing beautiful patterns of play. Like you said earlier, it was a wonderful game to watch. It was interesting to watch because there was this dynamic ability, the vertical edge always being searched for, how to destabilize your opponent at every stage. And it was back and forth, showing ambition throughout the game, always looking for the second goal. And just imagine if Morata wasn't constantly trying to provide from Ronaldo, because obviously he's getting flashbacks of his time at Real Madrid when it seemed like Ronaldo didn't want to play for him. So now he's doing everything he can to satisfy him, much to the displeasure of Juventus fans watching. But this is, considering all of that, considering the fact that, he missed that obvious sitter that really irritated Andrea Pirlo. I think that when you look at the game, you think that there's so much to grow and so much to improve with Alexandro coming in and the chemistry that is sure to come in. I think that they, more than all the other sides, have a lot of room to grow and to be a lot better, because I don't think we've seen much of them. I only think we've seen about 30% of their capacity. So this is why, for me, I'm very happy with them. I do think, interestingly enough, because when I was watching this game, it was so interesting, it kind of looks like Atalanta's obviously like Verona's a mini Atalanta, and I just almost feel like Andrea Pirlo is now looking to Hellas Verona, and he's almost like really a fan of Ivan Juric, because there's so many little things there that I'm noticing in the way that he's playing his football, what he's looking for, how to occupy the spaces. And Pirlo, you imagine, would want this technically beautiful game that's a little bit like, Roma and Napoli, but instead he's relying on old school ideals, one that have always been synonymous with the Juventus brand, which is, just winning, robust, athletic, go vertical, find the spaces, and when you look at the way that it's being played, I'm happy. There's nothing for me to honestly say that I'm miserable about anything there. I think there's a long way to go, but my interest in all of this is that, whether Dybala and Arthur can really affect this team as much as I hope they can.
Well, let's go there, because you're talking about obviously how he's trying to get his team working on the pitch, but we're starting to see more of his character off the pitch as well, with Andrea Pirlo, with him being angry about Morata there, and then also with Dybala scoring in the game over the weekend and running over to his coach to celebrate with him, and Pirlo talking about it afterwards and saying psychologically it's such a great thing for Dybala. And just to stick with you, Mina, here, let's get into the contract issues here, because it looks as though Juve want to keep him. It looks as though Dybala wants to stay. He's saying it's fake news about these contract rumours that actually reflect badly on him, and he's not saying any of these things. So can you give us some more insight there?
I was wondering whether his claims about fake news had to do between the figures that are mentioned and whether they are being referred to as net or gross, because obviously that makes a huge difference. So as we know, what was reported back in August was some of them were saying that he wanted double the amount that he's being paid. Others insisted, and somebody I work with closely in all of Juventus had said that he wanted around 20 million. Now, as I understood it, that was the gross amount. Gross amount, he's currently getting 12.77 million, which works out to 7.3 million net. So I think that if you're looking to move from 7.3 net to 20 million net, that's a huge figure to go to. But to go to 20 million gross isn't that huge when you consider the fact that he felt, and I understand this, him and his agent felt that obviously he had a tremendous season last year under Maurizio Sarri. I personally think he just lived up to a certain level of expectation. But anyway, he had a really good season, and he's a little bit irritated at the fact that Gonzalo Higuain and Matthias de Ligt at the time were getting paid more. And I can understand that. If you are building your team around Paulo Dybala, if you continue to say, at least in the papers and to the media, that this is the man that you feel has such a capacity to grow, that he is Juventus, that you'll do anything to keep him there because he's one of the best talents in the world, then he wants to see that represented in how much he's being paid. So I think asking for 20 million is actually, well, if it is the gross amount, it isn't actually too much to ask for. I understand wanting to be paid second only to Ronaldo. And I think what he's being irritated, what he's getting angry about is people think that's how much he's requesting on a net figure. Having said all of these things, my question is to management, is he worth it? Not because I don't think he's talented. I'm so happy he managed to get a goal. I say this over and over again. I do think he's very blessed, but my question is, at 27, he's still injury prone. He still takes a very long time to overcome many of the things that he faces, obstacles. Is he the guy that you want to depend on to lead this team? Is he the guy that you can rely on in much the same way Atalanta relies on Papu Gomez and the way that Inter rely on Barella or Lukaku? Is he that man for you? Because frankly speaking, in the seasons that he's been there, I can only pick out certain stages and he's grown. But when he falls, it takes him a very long time to come back up. And that's what worries me.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.